there needs to be more games that allow you to play as the villain. So I've been seeing this Stranger Things VR trailer. It's for the Meta Quest, the new VR headset, and it allows you to play as Vecna from Stranger Things, who is the villain. He's basically the guy who lives in the Upside Down, and he's controlling a lot of the bad events that happen. He basically has these telepathic or rather telekinetic powers, so he can like change things around in the Upside Down and in the real world as well. And basically, he's a really interesting villain because he was kind of, he was kind of corrupted by this professor guy. I think that's the story anyway. I didn't really fully understand the Stranger Things story, but my point being, playing as the villain in a game is so much more interesting than playing as the good guy. Like, I'm fed up of playing as the good guys. Like, I don't want to play as Link, and I don't want to play as these other um, protagonists that aren't really that interesting or deep. Like, Link is a very boring character, and yet he's supposedly Zelda is Tears of the Kingdom is one of the highest rated games, even though it's not that interesting from a story, from like a character perspective of the main character. And more games need to allow you to play as the villain or like as the zombies. Like I used to play in Left 4 Dead, I used to play as the zombies a lot and used to really enjoy that, playing against the humans. And basically, you're the bad guy. And a lot of the time, when you play as the villain, they'll have not only more interesting character, but more interesting gameplay choices as well, and interesting like gameplay innovations. Like with Left 4 Dead, when you can play as the hunter, you can play as the smoker, you can play as the tank, and imagine if it was in Zelda and you could play as Ganondorf. It would be amazing. And you could basically destroy Hyrule. Imagine if that was your job. It could be like a Just Cause type of game, except your job isn't to cause destruction of the Just Cause island. It's to go in Hyrule and destroy everything and just be a menace. That would be amazing. And it could be for other games as well, like in, like, say, um, I don't really play very many games these days, so I'm trying to think of a good example. So, with, for example, what would be a recent release? Like Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, I don't know if you can play as the villain guy. I don't know who's the main villain anyway, actually. Um, but yeah, that would be cool. Like, imagine if you were in Elden Ring and you were the bad guy, or imagine if you were in a Lord of the Rings game and you were playing as Sauron. Sauron is one of the most interesting villains in all of like novel history. He's such an interesting villain. His character is, you barely see him in Lord of the Rings. He's just this eye, very menacing because you don't really understand him properly. You don't understand his intentions. You never see him in a human form except for very briefly when you see him fight against Isildur when he loses the battle. And he's a very interesting character because he's not just pure evil. Sauron is, he wants to control things. He doesn't necessarily want to destroy everything. And being Sauron would be amazing. I watched Rings of Power and it was such an incredible show. And being able to play as Sauron would be such an amazing thing. And you could destroy all of the humans and the dwarves and the elves. I hate all this moral grandstanding and virtue signaling that games do nowadays. Like they're trying to make you trying to make you as the good guy and force their perception of what is good down your throat. Just give us some games that where we can actually be evil and do evil things. That would be much more interesting to me. Not trying to save the world like for the 100th time as Link. When you try, haven't you already beaten Ganondorf like 20,000 times in the previous games? So why is it interesting to do that all over again? Why can you not play as Ganondorf and defeat Link in this one? Why can you not destroy Link and destroy Zelda? All these games where these pesky humans are always interfering and trying to think that they're the good guys when they're not the good guys. They are just portrayed that way by the creators. But a lot of the time, the villains are actually the good guys because I mean, they're not really good, but they aren't necessarily evil either. Like Sauron is just a guy, he wants control, and Ganondorf wants control. I imagine it's not he wants to kill everyone and be a super evil thing. They're more complicated. These villains are more complicated than what you think. So anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think games nowadays are boring? Are you bored of playing as the good guy protagonist, the 100 times done over, save the world, save the princess as Mario? Uh, I mean, actually, that's a good example. There are probably some games where you can play as Bowser. I'm not sure about that, but I think there are some Super Mario games where you can actually play as Bowser. So that's a good example, and that's much more interesting, where you can play as the villain and you can beat up Mario or whatever. And what are some other games? I can't really think of any right now. Um, hmm. I'm really struggling to think of some games like that I actually understand who is the villain, who's the good guy. Like for example, what was some recent PlayStation games that have been released? So there was Horizon Zero Dawn. Don't know who the villain is in that, but the main character in Horizon Zero Dawn is so annoying and so like moral virtue signaling. It's such a virtue signaling and woke game. It's trying to say, oh, all the it's trying to send a message, and I hate these games that try to force their perception of what is good and what is bad onto you, rather than allow you to make those decisions and play as the potentially the bad guy. In Horizon Zero Dawn, yeah, Aloy, that's her name. Aloy is such an annoying character. It's just I don't want to play that. I want to play something more interesting. Give me something different, please, developers. Do something different. Nowadays, it's just so unoriginal and so boring. None of the characters are interesting. It's just done to death. It's really boring. I want to play as like the guy in James Bond. The what's his name? Well, there's been multiple villains across multiple James Bond films, but how many of those have been made into a game where you can actually play as the bad guy? You always play as James Bond, and James Bond is always represented as the good person. He's trying to do these good things, even though he's obviously doing really bad things. Like he's killing people, he's killing innocent civilians, and just loads of people who are just doing their job, and security people like security guards who aren't even they're not even thinking about evil things. These are just security guards who are just employed to do a job, and James Bond is killing them, and he's obviously a bad person. But the creators of these franchises, they portray them as good people, just because the bad people are portrayed as the Russians and whatever else. It's always the Russian people who are portrayed as being bad and evil, or it can be sometimes the Chinese people, like basically the cultures that Americans don't understand, or they are not familiar with. Those are always portrayed as the bad people. So why not just let us play as the bad people in James Bond games? Anyway, let me know what you think. That's just my thoughts on the whole current video game industry, and basically what is the direction of the industry when it comes to character design and character like protagonists, and it's not very interesting. Thanks for watching.